Here in the States, we are less than a day away from the release of Donkey Kong Bananza, but if you live elsewhere in the world, the game is already out. And so I did something a bit sneaky. I pre-ordered the game on the Australian eShop so that I would be able to get my hands on the game just that little bit early. So I'm a couple hours into Nintendo's latest first-party game for the Switch 2, and I have some thoughts. Not critical thoughts about the game itself. It's way too early for me to give any type of impressions or certainly even a review or even a preview of the game. I haven't played enough to do that. However, what I can give my thoughts on are the basics, the visuals, the performance, and kind of the overall vibe of the game itself so far. I'm really into what I've been playing. Clearly, Nintendo put a lot of effort into Donkey Kong's return to the AAA landscape, and it shows. What I see here is a very detailed, very impressive game that has fully destructible environments, which is nothing new, but I wanted to break that down a bit. If you've read the recent Ask the Developer series that Nintendo has released around Donkey Kong Bananza, then you're likely aware that the game is using voxel technology to make all of the environments fully destructible. And when Brandon and I played Donkey Kong Bananza back in April at the Switch 2 premiere event, we both noticed some frame drops, and that's something that Nintendo has also commented on, admitting that the game doesn't run at a solid 60 FPS, and that does seem to be the case here. In fact, performance in Donkey Kong Bananza feels quite similar to what I saw in Tears of the Kingdom. When you have really complex devices, Tears of the Kingdom will take its frame rate down to 30 FPS while those things are going on screen, and then come right back to a fairly solid 60 frames per second presentation. And so far in the first couple of hours with Bananza, I'm seeing something pretty similar here. When you start to break parts of the terrain that generate lots of particle effects, you'll see that the frame rate will very, very briefly dip into the 30 FPS territory. It's something that you can visually see. The frame rate kind of becomes a bit chunky for a sec and comes right back up to that silky smooth 60 FPS that most of the game presents most of the time. There are also things that can be confused for a frame rate drop, like hit stop when you break a big banana or something like that. But really when you're digging around is when you'll see it the most. When you're in tight quarters and there's lots and lots of stuff going on, it's not uncommon to see the frame rate kind of briefly go down to 30, then ramp back up and catch up. Now, that sounds pretty bad, but when you're playing the game, you don't really feel the difference in frame rate. And what I mean by that is that Donkey Kong himself, the character, the game, is still very responsive even when you're doing that. So if you're just mashing one of the buttons, destroying a bunch of stuff, and the frame rate starts to slow down, you're not going to feel like Donkey Kong is moving or breaking things any slower than he was before. Instead, it still feels very smooth, very fluid, and you're able to get through those subterranean areas with relative ease. So I don't know how much I really mind this. It's not something that is really distracting, but if you're looking for it, you can definitely notice it. I'm fairly impressed with what Nintendo has put together here. There's a lot going on in the world. You can go very far down underground in the levels that I've played, and there's stuff to find down there. It's not just digging for the sake of digging. There's loads of treasure chests. There's lots of other stuff, but it remains fairly performant throughout. I thought this was really going to bother me, seeing that there were frame drops from 60 to 30 fairly frequently in, the first really big AAA title from Nintendo for their new console, but realistically in practice, I'm not thinking about it while I play the game. Sure, they're visually apparent and it's obvious for someone with a discerning eye, but it doesn't impact the gameplay whatsoever. It doesn't change my enjoyment of the game, at least not at this early stage. So it'll remain to be seen. We'll have a full review coming soon for Donkey Kong Bananza here on the channel, but for now, I can say that it at least performs well enough. Sure, it dips to 30 FPS, but it doesn't do so when you're not really doing anything. It's when big physics events happen on the screen, and I can at least accept that. It's something that I truly believe the Switch 1 wouldn't have been capable of doing at an acceptable frame rate. So it's really interesting to see what Nintendo has done here. Obviously, the jury's still out. We have a lot more to look into with this game, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll put a little extra gameplay here on the back end for you to check out, and we'll see you next time. Bye.